Edmondson, who is a learning support teacher and says she was left with no option but to leave her job after bosses failed to support her with her dyslexia. Sean Douglas, who runs a video production company, he says he previously lost a job, again because of his dyslexia. And Louise Green is here as well. Louise supports teenagers and young adults with learning difficulties, and she believes that she wasn't shortlisted for a job because of her dyslexia and poor writing skills. Thank you all very much for coming on the programme. Thanks for talking to us. I wonder if you could just explain to our audience, first of all, Rosie, what it's like having dyslexia.
Having dyslexia is a different way of thinking. Your brain's wired in a different way, and the way you process various information is in a different way.
Yeah, I think, for each person it's personal to them, but the usual things of reading's difficult, spelling's difficult, writing's difficult, memory's quite a bit of a problem for a lot of people.
Yes, it's a short-term auditory memory. I don't remember what people have said. I'm okay if I've seen it written, but somebody will say, meet you at 5:15. I'll go, yes, fine. 2:45 or 5:15, it's gone.
Really? Within seconds?
Within seconds,
And what
yes.
about reading and writing, spelling?
Well, I grew up not knowing I was dyslexic, so I just thought I was stupid or careless or lazy. I don't read accurately, and the true story is at Christmas I was reading to my 4-year-old granddaughter, and my 6-year-old grandson was correcting me, and he was right.
And so if I, which I'm not going to do, but if I ask you to spell a word, let's use the word dismal, for example, what are you hearing?
When I hear dismal, I hear one sound, dismal. I don't hear all the breakups. Obviously, I've trained to be a specialist teacher, so I've learnt to do it, so I now know it's d, I, s, m, a, l. But that's taken training, it's not automatic. And so a word like scarf, I'll get the letters in the wrong order and not notice, because to me it's scarf. I don't hear it with all the sounds in the right order inside my head.
You've all got different experiences of discrimination in the workplace because of your dyslexia. Sean, tell us about your old company.
Yeah, so I'm a video producer, and I'd gone through my career and reached quite a high level. And at one point I'd gone into a company where I thought I'd take a bit of a step back just to fill in some of the gaps in my knowledge, and I'd been working on projects which had crews in India and, really complicated projects. And at this production company, I was just piled with paperwork. So I was employed because of my creativity and the positive attributes of my dyslexia, but yet I was forced into doing something which, my brain's not made to do. And there were some really simple adjustments that could have been done, or there could have been some job sharing that would have allowed me to excel. But, after 3 months, I was brought into the office and told, you're slow, your work's laboured. I was coming in at 6 in the morning to try and get on top of this. Why do you come in at 6 in the morning? Nobody else does. And that's the kind of discrimination I had.
So you said, presumably, I have dyslexia.
In the interview I said I had dyslexia.
They knew?
They knew, yeah,
right.
Definitely, yeah.
Yet they still let you go after 3 months?
Yeah, it got to a point where I was brought into an office and basically told I was bad at my job, and you have a month to pull your socks up. And after that, you don't really want to be in that environment where you're looking over your shoulder, and a lot of people don't talk about the emotional side of dyslexia. They talk about the reading and the writing, but actually what it does to your self-confidence is as much of a problem as the physical difficulties that you have.
Right. Rosie, what about your own experience?
For me, just a complete lack of understanding, awareness, because of the difficulties are invisible. People can make assumptions and judgments and think you're not trying hard enough, or think you're just being slow, or you're just making mistakes, just being really careless and not taking your time. I mean, I also have dyspraxia too, which isn't as known as dyslexia.
Do you want to explain to our audience what dyspraxia is?
Dyspraxia is another specific learning difficulty. It affects the way the brain is wired, the signals which go down to the body, so it affects coordination, balance, fine motor skills, spatial awareness, knowing where you need to be in time, distance and space, trying to navigate yourself around like a crowd maybe, or trying to get yourself somewhere, trying to navigate a new place, trying to pick up, taking you 10 times longer to pick up basic skills many people just simply take for granted.
Right. Are there some jobs that you think you couldn't do, that you shouldn't do because of your dyslexia?
Air traffic controller.
OK, fair enough.
I'm not good with lefts and rights or ports and starboards.
Okay.
That would be a nightmare for me.
But by and large, you feel that you should be given the opportunity to do the same job as anybody else wants to do?
Definitely.
You should be allowed to do any job you have the capability to do, absolutely.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, and as I said before, there are simple, sometimes really simple adjustments that employers can make. There's also assistive technology, so you can have bits of software that will read your text back to you. And that's amazing because, as Louise said, you can't see mistakes that you make, but you'll easily hear them.
Yes.
And I think, a lot of employers are cottoning onto that. So, you can help an individual, you can buy the software for an individual.
Which will auto-correct any copy that you're
Auto-correct
writing.
things, or you can speak to the computer and it will write the words for you.
Yes.
But rather than help an individual, companies need to think about being a bit more holistic. So there are some companies that get blanket licenses for that software, and so every terminal has that software, so people that maybe don't identify as dyslexic or are a bit ashamed about being dyslexic can use that stuff, and that's been proved with companies that have seen that they have 10 dyslexics. They've put the software on all the computers, they suddenly have 100 dyslexics.
Really? Louise, tell us about the job you applied for, that you weren't shortlisted for interview, you believe, because of your dyslexia.
Yes, I applied for a job with the school. I wasn't shortlisted, and I rang them up and asked them why I wasn't shortlisted, in case I'd done something wrong. And the chap at the end of the phone actually said, "Oh, well, your handwriting wasn't good." On the form, I made it very clear that I was dyslexic.
And what was the job?
It was to teach special needs for a private school.
Right. So, with your own experience, you would think you would have...
I should have been shortlisted. I don't say I should have got the job, but I definitely should have been interviewed.
And when he said that your handwriting wasn't good enough, you said...
I asked him, well, they did know I was dyslexic. He got very defensive and then denied he'd said that, and that was the end of the conversation.
Right. You didn't take your former employers to an employment tribunal. Tell us why.
Me personally, like I said, the emotional side of dyslexia can be quite tough, and at that point that was a bit of a tail between the legs moment. And for me, it was more about proving to myself that actually I was as good a producer as I knew I was, and taking an employer to a tribunal for me at that point wasn't really an option, I didn't think, for me.
What about you, Rosie?
For me, like Sean was saying, the emotional side, it made me very anxious. It made me lose my confidence, lose my self-esteem. It had a huge impact on my emotional side of things, and just really more that I wanted to raise awareness, and that made me want to help other people and help raise awareness of hidden differences out there.
And you actually left your job, didn't you? It wasn't, in Sean's case, he was let go, a euphemism effectively. You decided to leave. Why?
Basically, because it affected my confidence and my self-esteem so much, and the people around me, like my boyfriend, my mum, like could see how much it was affecting me, and were basically saying you're worth more than that. You've got so many strengths. You have so much empathy towards other people. You're so determined. You're able to think outside the box. Why are you you're worth more?
Can I read you some comments from people watching you around the country, and they saw the interview with the woman who's won the case against Starbucks. This texter doesn't leave their name. That woman shouldn't be doing the job if she can't do it. Steve on Twitter says, if you can't do the job, don't do it. You can't have another person watching over you. They may as well do it themselves. And Anthony on text says, dyslexia at work, thank God for the compensation culture. Now, there are some more positive ones, which I will read in a moment, but how do you react to those, Louise?
Well, most employers shouldn't be worried about employing dyslexics, because most of us need a reasonable adjustment. We don't need the whole job changed. In my case, anything I write must be proofread. I want it proofread, so I ask people to proofread. And now we've got computers, I've got spell check and autocorrect. If you're dyslexic, you can take longer to pick up a job. So if you're given proper training, I mean, laminated cards with pictures on and the temperatures on would have been helpful. You can make reasonable adjustment so the lady could do her job, and some elements of a job, like filing, you might not have to do. Other people that are good at that can do that part of the job.
Another woman, Elizabeth, emails, would you be saying it was acceptable for a medical professional to make such mistakes? Would you be understanding if your bank lost your money or messed up a house purchase because of a dyslexic employee? Just accept that some people can't be employed for certain jobs.
No, I totally disagree. A dyslexic is no more likely to make those mistakes than anyone. The banking crises weren't done by dyslexics. So anybody can make a mistake, and all good companies should have strategies in place so that these mistakes made by any particular person are identified.
And I think employers should look at the people they've employed. They've put someone through an interview process. That person's obviously stood out from the crowd. So think about those attributes that person has. And if you take the example of Starbucks, you know, we're not going to Starbucks because we think their coffee's worth £3. We're going because of the environment, the customer services. And that woman probably had all of those attributes. That part of her job is a small part of the job. It's not the overall part, you know, it's not the overall bit of her job. So actually, if she went in there, you go into Starbucks and she's really nice, she's attentive, she gets your orders right, she makes you feel like you're, you know, a person that they want in your store, that's what you need to think about, and that's a very small part of what she's doing.
Hen on Twitter says, I feel for the young woman who has dyslexia. It's heart-rending. It seems there is no real support or understanding. And this texter, dyslexia is not just about spelling and grammar, it's also about the way you think. If people keep labelling it as a disability rather than a learning difference, we will never overcome prejudice. Now, if there are people watching, parents or adults who are thinking, hang on, this sounds familiar, maybe I have dyslexia. What's their first port of call? Where do they go to first?
If they're in education, they should go to the school and ask to speak to the form tutor and the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, the SENCO. Every school must have one by law.
And we've got plenty of students who watch us, so if you're at college or uni, the same, there'll be a coordinator
at the college
university.
or uni, you have a disability service or a student support service, whatever they call it, and go to that. The reason it's called a disability is because of the Education Act. The Education Act of 2010 calls it a learning disability, and we have to stick to government legislation. But it's actually, as Rosie says and Sean says, it's a brain wiring, different brain wiring.
And I think also if you're in work, there is access to work which you can go to with your employer, and that you can get an in-work assessment, and there are grants available to help you get the assistive technology that can help you do your job better.
I think as well, there's also charities, you're not alone. There's charities like Dyslexia Action, the British Dyslexia Association. For anyone out there who thinks they might be dyspraxic, there's the Dyspraxia Foundation, and there's lots of other people. When you have dyslexia or dyspraxia, you can feel very isolated and think, oh, it's just me being me. But there's lots of other people out there going through similar experiences.
And if teachers want support, the SPLD Dyslexia Trust has free training and free information on their website.
Okay. Thank you very much, all of you. Louise, Sean, Rosie, thank you very much for coming on the programme. Thank you. Throughout the programme, we're going to bring you the latest on that head-on train.